Welcome, everybody. We are Marvelous Musings. I'm Agraj,
I'm Addy.
And I'm Naranjan.
and today we will be talking about the Dark Avengers. I'll let Addy explain this whole.
All right, so the Dark Avengers is something that first came up in a lot of different comic series, but it's something that we're seeing now that Marvel is launching itself into its shows and as it moves into Phase 4. So the Dark Avengers are basically a group of Avengers who, as the name suggests, they've gone dark. They're not exactly as moral, and they share the same powers and they share the same abilities as their Avenger counterparts, but they aren't as committed to upholding social good as the normal Avengers are. This is suggested by the name of Dark Avengers. So in this video, we're going to be talking a lot about who the Dark Avengers are, why we think they're Dark Avengers, and also just why they exist. And also, one key thing that we're going to be bringing up that many of you may not have noticed is that Dark Avengers have existed in the MCU for a long time. But this is the first time we're looking at the Dark Avengers all really come together.
As we saw in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and later in the post-credit scene of Black Widow. Oh, spoiler alert, by the way. We see Valentina. She's basically the counterpart of Nick Fury in Phase 4, and Nick Fury in the case that she's the one recruiting all the Avengers together as a group. So right now in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we saw U.S. agent John Walker be the counterpart of Captain America, and later in Black Widow's post-credit scene, we see Yelena being a counterpart to basically Black Widow, who's going to be targeting Hawkeye in the upcoming Hawkeye series.
So let's start this off. Let's start by talking about Valentina, because I personally feel that she's the most important key in all of this. So Valentina is, to me, she's the exact counterpart of Nick Fury, and more importantly, we're seeing this play out over multiple different series, mini series, as whatever the plural of series is. So Valentina, to me, she definitely seems like she's Nick Fury because she's going around, she's recruiting all these people, and she also fits in really well because Nick Fury said in, I believe, Spider-Man Far From Home that he used to know everything, and now he knows nothing. But now the fact that Nick Fury knows nothing suggests that there are some other people who have taken his place, and there are some other people who are taking that niche that he had, who now know things that he doesn't know, something that would be inconceivable prior to phase 3. But here in Phase 4, we're seeing an MCU, and we're going to get into it later, but the MCM, we're seeing the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse at this point being ravaged by chaos. And I feel Valentina is a key linchpin in all of this chaos because Valentina represents the one person who's going to be able to bring all of these dark heroes together, be it your Yelena or your John Walker or anybody else. So now let's move on and look at what Yelena means to all this.
Before you do that, it's just sort of the parallels are clearly there with Valentina coming in the post-credit scenes at the ends of these shows, near the ends for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, just like Nick Fury did with each of the Avengers when he went to Iron Man at the end, or when he sent Iron Man to see the Hulk at the end, that sort of thing. So we're seeing these parallels exist. So it's clear that Marvel is trying to gear us towards going in this direction for the Dark Avengers. So yeah, let's start talking about Yelena Belova. So Yelena Belova is the sister of Natasha Romanoff, or pseudo sister of Natasha Romanoff, if you've seen Black Widow. She is a clear opposite to Black Widow, as she is the second Black Widow we've seen. And during the post-credit scene of Black Widow, we see Valentina Allegra de Fontaine see her, and it turns out that she's already been under her employ for a little bit of time. So it's like she's already been working for her, and that we're going to see more of this come, especially now that with the fact that we know that Yelena is going to be hunting down Hawkeye in the Hawkeye series when he's training Kate Bishop. So it's clear that they're building these connections, sort of this darker Avengers cast that we see these people who aren't exactly always obeying the law. We see people like John Walker as well with that. They toe the line between good and evil at times. So I think it's very interesting to see these different Avengers in a different light almost.
Next we have John Walker. John Walker is clearly like the complete opposite of what Steve Rogers' Captain America was. He was Captain America after Steve, hired by the government against Sam Wilson's will, and in the show Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he clearly showed he's nothing like Steve Rogers. He's he can lose control pretty quickly. And
So I really like that you brought up that John Walker shares none of Captain America's ideals, which I think is a key linchpin to the whole idea of the Dark Avengers and each of the Dark Avengers on their own as well. See, the whole idea behind the Dark Avengers is that while they share the physical traits, I mean, one of the Dark Avengers we're going to be talking about in this video or podcast is the Abomination. We're going to be talking about Mordo from Doctor Strange as well, in case you might have forgotten about those guys. Yes, the Incredible Hulk did exist. It happened, but let's move on. Now, going back to the Dark Avengers, John Walker shares those physical traits with Captain America, but it's those ideologies, it's the whole clash of ideologies. That's where the difference exists. And that's the key point of John Walker's character. Where Captain America was all about the actual traits that made him. You need to remember how Captain America got paid. He was chosen against the will of all government officials because he had a certain personality that would suit Captain America best. But that isn't why John Walker was chosen. John Walker was, if you go back actually to the very first Captain America movie, Captain America, the first Avenger, that's where we see that Captain America was chosen ahead of another soldier. So a soldier who was exceptionally talented, exceptionally skilled, was also a bit of a bully. In the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Captain America, the new US agent, is that soldier from the 1940s, the one that Steve Rogers was chosen ahead of. And the reason for this is because the criteria for the government never changed. They wanted someone who was superficially, who would fit the mold of Captain America, but they never truly understood what Captain America actually meant. And that's why John Walker is going to be one of the key ideological and philosophical linchpins of the Dark Avengers. He's going to be the moral core of that team, just how Steve Rogers was for the Avengers.
So we, as you mentioned before, have a couple different ideas of possible Dark Avengers, like Mordo and Abomination as well. So if we go, let's go into that a bit. So we have Carl Mordo, who was seen in Doctor Strange. He was an associate of Strange, I guess you could say, who believed deeply that the laws of nature shouldn't be defied, no matter what the cost. So included in that was his absolute disgust and hatred for dark magic. So if you remember back to Doctor Strange, and yes, that was quite a while back, at the end of it, in the post-credit scene, you actually see Mordo come back at the end and siphon the energy from Pangborn, a man who was once a sorcerer before, stating that the world actually had too many sorcerers. So ever since he found out that the Ancient One was actually taking part in dark magic, he sort of succumbed to this darker side of himself that allowed him to hate people and sorcerers specifically, stating that there's too many of them in existence. So I think he would be the perfect candidate for an opposite to Doctor Strange in the Avengers, in the Dark Avengers. Just because he stands for everything that Doctor Strange doesn't. Doctor Strange has this idea that magic is important. Magic is what's protecting the world from outside threats. Mordo believes the opposite, that magic is terrible. Dark magic especially will be the death of us all. So that's what I think allows him to be a candidate for the Dark Avengers, like the others.
Now, Agatha was a witch that went evil and basically absorbed all the powers of her family and her fellow witches, and was the witch that was against Wanda to take her chaos magic to become all powerful and stuff, until basically now Wanda enchanted her basically to become a normal person. Agnes, if you will, the nosy neighbor kind of person that now lives what was the place? What was the setting of
It was Westview, I think.
Yeah, Westview.
Westview. The nosy neighbor of Westview, basically. So I guess she could become a complete direct opposite or counterpart to Wanda and combat her chaos magic, someone like that.
And she's more of a sort of possible idea like that. That's one I guess we're not too sure about, mainly because we know that she is trapped at the moment. So it's unsure whether she'll come back or what we saw was the end of her. It could go either way, but it would be really cool to see her in that sort of Dark Avengers role as an opposite to Scarlet Witch.
I guess if Mordo's in the mix of the Dark Avengers, he could maybe somehow bring Agatha's mind back to.
Yeah, sure. I don't see why not.
I definitely agree with that, all of you guys actually, because one of the key things that stands out to me about the Dark Avengers is how neatly each of the Dark Avengers fits, almost like a yin and a yang to light counterparts. Let's see, like for example, whereas Doctor Strange is all about harnessing the powers of magic, because to him magic is like medicine. He's a doctor. He's trained his whole life so that he can use magic to do certain, so that he can use medicine to do certain things to make human life better. He sees magic the same way. But Mordo is all about restraining and being and following the rules of magic and not bending those rules, like we saw Doctor Strange do with Dormammu, or when we saw him do the 14,605 different possibilities. Mordo wouldn't have done that because Mordo thinks that's a violation of the natural order. Just like so, that's the fundamental difference between the two of them. Just like that, if we look at Wanda versus Agatha, Wanda wants more desperately than anything to have a normal life, to have a normal family, normal kids. Whereas Agatha has wanted nothing more than to be able to harness the power that she has. Again, now if we move on to John Walker, again, Steve Rogers is freedom and genuine liberty. John Walker is order and upholding an image of freedom and liberty. Of course, as we see with the bloodstained shield, that doesn't always mean actual freedom or liberty. So those are the three main ones. Let's talk about some more, Agraj.
So let's discuss Abomination or Emil Blonsky a little bit. So let's let's go back a couple years ago, back to the Incredible Hulk, aka my least favorite Marvel movie. Sorry, no, he's the opposition to Bruce Banner. We see him tasked to go and hunt down the Incredible Hulk. Now, this is me trying to remember what happens in the Incredible Hulk right now. And by the end of it, I believe he got some of the he asked to get injected with the Hulk's blood. And what ended up happening is that he becomes the Abomination, this guy who goes absolutely mad because of all this power and the mutation that he's undergone. So he goes and the Hulk fights him and wins in the end, and he gets kept in Alaska. Now, that could have been it for the character, and I think a lot of people thought that was it for the character because The Incredible Hulk was a terrible movie. I mean, I personally wouldn't mind seeing the character again, but now we know that the character is coming back with the new Shang-Chi trailer just coming out. We saw him at the end of the trailer fighting against Wong. So that'll be a really interesting thing to see. And it is possible. This is another one kind of like Agatha where we're not really sure if he could come back in as a Dark Avengers or if he's just, again, a one-off villain that we will see go away right away. But I think his reintroduction into the MCU could be an opportunity to put him in this sort of in the Dark Avengers as a sort of opposite Hulk.
So for Hulk's character, they actually can have two people. Maybe Ross can fit the role of the Hulk opposite. You know, the Red Hulk.
As Red Hulk. Yeah, that could be interesting too.
That could be interesting as well, and it could also be like contrasting colors. You know, green and red. I guess it could kind of opposite each other. And yeah, there could be a scene in Shang-Chi just like in Black Widow, maybe another post-credit scene where Valentina is like recruiting Abomination as being the Hulk counterpart for the Dark Avengers team. As another member for it.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why all three of us really like the idea of the Dark Avengers. It's because it's a mirror image of the Avengers and the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole in itself. It's because these ideas, these conversations that we're able to have, it allows for so much different discussion, so much diversity of opinion, because there's so much you can actually do with these ideas. Like just within the Hulk, within Hulk's dark counterpart, we've got Ross being Red Hulk and Emil Blonsky being Abomination, and they're both brilliant ideas that could work out really well. And that's why we as a team, we love the Dark Avengers. So Naranjan, what do you think is the future for the Dark Avengers? Who do you think is going to come up next?
It would be interesting. Actually, what I really want to see is the Dark Avengers going up against the Young Avengers. I think that would be a really interesting fight. And in whatever movie that is, that could be in an upcoming Young Avengers movie. Basically, they could have that scene with the Dark Avengers. If you guys remember in the first Avengers movie where we're in that entire team shot, we see Hulk roaring, and then the camera pans out on the members of the Avengers. We could probably have like a Dark Avengers variant of that scene where it goes around showing off each member of the Dark Avengers as well. Same thing for the Young Avengers, but yeah, I would really like to see them go up against the Young Avengers. That'll be really interesting.
Yeah, and there's a lot of implications there for like what does this mean? You know, like are the Dark Avengers purely evil, or are they people who think what they're doing is good, but their methods, maybe their execution is not what we consider conventionally good. Like, for example, John Walker being that exact type of character.
That's a really good question, Agraj. And I was going to bring up John Walker, but you brought him up yourself. But yeah, John Walker is one of those characters where he's got his own reasons, and in his mind, and to a lot of viewers, probably they're valid reasons. But regarding what kind of future we see for the Dark Avengers, actually, that's one of the areas where I disagree about with Naranjan. I think it would be much better off to see them facing off against the Avengers themselves, because that's going to be a much better payoff than young Avengers who we may or may not have actually met at this point. But watching the Dark Avengers go up against heroes we've been watching by that point probably for 15 years, that's going to be a fascinating and wonderful payoff. That's just what I think. And that's why we love the Dark Avengers, frankly.
I'd say the only comment I really have on that is the fact that we don't know what the future for the current Avengers is. Considering Hawkeye is a limited series, for one thing, it is very possible that this could be the end of Hawkeye. And for that reason, who knows what will actually happen in the future, whether it'll be the Avengers they face, the young Avengers, if they even exist. Am I right? So this is all just a theory at the end of the day, but it would be sick. It would be really cool if they did. I think it would be cause for a lot of interesting storylines and arcs in the MCU.
Wait, who did you say if they exist?
The Dark Avengers.
Oh yeah, they definitely exist.
Yeah. No, I mean, but yeah, it does feel like that's the direction they're heading in, but you never know with Marvel. But I think that's a good place to wrap it up for today.
Yep. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for listening in.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for staying. And if you've stayed this long, stay a little bit longer. Watch our next episode, which is going to be either on the Young Avengers or on the multiverse. Again, it could be anything, and we're really glad that you showed up. Thanks.
Thank you. See you next time.
See you next time.